to set the world on fire. I just want to start a flame in your heart. In my heart I have but one desire.
Hello, I'm Phoenix, and welcome to World Revolution News, the show where we cover the struggle of people versus power, or in some cases, power versus people. You know, covering world revolutionary news is hard, for a lot of reasons, but one of them is I can't cover everything, of course. There's too much going on at any given moment. This conflict is at least as old as written history itself, and is omnipresent, as I've illustrated on this map, which marks all of the places in the world where hierarchical power structures create oppression in red. And of course, this map includes climate change, which is as good a place to start as any with this new format, since I'm kind of set up like a weather person. That's right, folks, it's getting hot out, oppressively hot. Hot as in, the world around us is burning, please help. No, seriously, it's actually on fire, please do something. Ha ha! It's so hot that even the Arctic Circle, normally famous for things like being cold and Santa Claus, is on fire now. It has been for months. Seasonal wildfires aren't so uncommon in this region, but this season has of course been exceptional. Many fires have burnt in Siberia, Alaska, and northern Canada, but there has also been some in Greenland, which is noted to be unusual by climate scientists. Radiative power from the wildfires in the Arctic Circle are above average compared to the last 15 years of recorded data. By mid-August, estimated wildfire emissions of CO2 within the Arctic Circle alone had surpassed 150 million tons. That is much more than the total amount in any other year since 2003, and 3 times as much as Sweden's total annual emissions. Yikes. But some good news came recently in the form of a landmark victory where indigenous groups in the South American Amazon won an important court case that would protect millions of acres of indigenous land from further deforestation by encroaching cattle ranchers. And then...
Olha o que eles fizeram com a nossa reserva. 2 anos que a gente estava lutando para preservar isso aqui e agora vem os baderneiros e ficam fogo na nossa aldeia. Se não bastasse a Vale matar nosso rio, matar o nosso fonte de vida, agora vieram e puseram fogo na nossa reserva. Nós não vamos nos calar. Amanhã nós vamos fechar a pista e queremos a mídia aqui para nos defender.
Yeah, this is happening. And thanks to the ridiculous man-child in charge of Brazil, a bunch of cattle farmers just burned down a massive amount of the Amazon rainforest in a blaze which is still ongoing at the time this video will come out. Here's some context. Much of the world's beef industry is actually based out of land that was once the Amazon rainforest. 1.64 million metric tons of beef were exported from Brazil last year, and that number is growing.
You bastard! You'll be up against the wall when the revolution comes! Ah!
Now, that sort of number can be hard to put in perspective, so consider that, for instance, the UK, a country known for tea, corned beef, colonialism, and still being a part of the European Union at the time of this report, went through roughly 29,000 tons of corned beef last year, and 95% of it came from Brazil. The EU as a whole that year imported 120,000 tons, and all of that is only 1/10 of the world's total beef exports from Brazil. As globalized industrial domestic pastoralism continues to expand, the incentive for Brazilian cattle ranchers to clear the forest for more grazing area expands as well, with a growing number of 60 to 80% of the deforested Amazon being used for pastures. And while other industries are contributing to the deforestation of the Amazon, satellite measurements have shown that the majority of the Amazon fires this year are directly the result of slash and burn style land clearing by cattle ranchers. Now, this has been directly and openly encouraged by the recently instated president of Brazil, Bolsonaro, and his government. Bolsonaro has been incredibly brazen about perpetuating the centuries-long genocide of indigenous peoples in the region, dismissing and strategizing against environmental conservation and indigenous protection laws. Bolsonaro has even gone as far as to say, where there is indigenous land, there is wealth underneath. What? Wealth for who, you ridiculous cartoon supervillain? What is the wealth going to be worth to anyone when your global social economic structures collapse around you in the desperate conditions of the inhospitable hellscape which you're helping to create?
Bolsonaro says this part of the Amazon belongs to Brazil, and Brazil should be able to manage it how it wants.
No.
So then, the G7 offered $20 million to help fight the fires. Now, for those of you who don't know, the G7 is an international intergovernmental economic organization comprising 7 of the largest national economies. It's got Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, the United Kingdom, and the United States. The G7 controls roughly 58% of the world's wealth, and they offered to donate $20 million or euros or whatever to help fight the fires. That is a small number. DreamWorks spent more money on conservation efforts by producing the 2007 animated cult classic Bee Movie at $150 million. 5 years later, the embarrassingly disastrous 2012 animated film Food Fight, no, not Sausage Party, Food Fight, starring Hilary Duff, Charlie Sheen, and Wayne Brady, cost $65 million. The G7 offering Brazil $20 million to fight the forest fires after the EU alone spent over $500 million last year on Brazilian cattle farming is like if a multinational arms dealer saw a homeless mother and child on the street, went to the grocery store, took out a half-eaten Snickers bar from a trash can, then came back, laid it on the ground in front of them and said, "You're welcome." And I mean, it's not a direct metaphor, but the sentiment is the same. And as the fires continued to burn, Bolsonaro has so far refused the aid and not really done much to stop the situation, at least according to a lot of people who were on the ground. And instead he's had an insult-laden internet feud with French political leader Macron for trying to colonize South America alongside Germany through the G7. And look, while he's being a toxic, ridiculous man-child about it, I don't think he's wrong about that necessarily. That's exactly the kind of thing France does normally. But Bolsonaro is a blazing hypocrite, and the Brazilian government is also a colonial force, and the peoples of the Amazon know this. And Bolsonaro is bad for them, and bad for global climate, which is bad for just all people in general. Which, I don't know, I think maybe technically makes Bolsonaro a bad person by any definition. Can I say that without getting shut down as fake news? I mean, really, do bad people even objectively exist? Come to think of it, is objectivity even possible, or just a mass projection of collectivized evil? If a journalist can't be truly objective, then is it dishonest to claim objectivity? And are we not still being dishonest unless we fully embrace that subjectivity?
I think Amazon belongs to the whole human because everybody needs to have pure air. And it's responsibility also for everybody to take care, do something. Anyone can change the world. And it's no indigenous people responsibility to take care about the world. Each one of us needs to be responsible economically, environmentally, culturally, because otherwise the humanity is just going to disappear like a dinosaurs. We need to think about all that.
Speaking of Portuguese colonial history, which actually still kind of affects things today in ways most people in the world tend to overlook, for our next story we turn to the Canary Islands on the west coast of Africa. These islands are actually named after canines, or dogs, because when the islands were discovered, the islands were full of large dogs which the indigenous people were said to have worshipped. And I mean, who can blame them? Dogs are great. Look at this. Just look at that pupperoo right there. Yeah. Sadly, all of these islands were colonized and a lot of the people killed and assimilated into European culture. And, well, that sucks. And their land was made to be instrumental in further colonial efforts which have continued for hundreds of years. The islands themselves are still under Spanish rule to this day. Anyway, this is what these islands looked like for much of August.
¡Vamos! ¡Fuera! ¡Fuera ahí! ¡Hostia!
Now the fires are said to be under control, but also an anonymous source tells me that the Spanish government's inability to properly manage this situation has sparked up some new interest in an independence movement. Hey, time will tell, but we'll be keeping an eye on Las Canarias moving forward.
By the end of this century, if emissions keep rising, the average temperature on Earth could go up another 4 to 8 degrees. What I'm saying is the planet's on f***ing fire. This is an actual crisis. Fire, floods, crop failures. The planet's on f***ing fire.
That's right, folks. Industrial society at large is dropping a fire mixtape on the globe, and it's actually kind of a bummer. We're seeing massive blazes around the world. Bolivia, Indonesia, the Australian region is approaching a relatively difficult fire season, and recent wildfires caused this grisly scene of dead kangaroos on the beaches of Queensland. Farmers in and near the Iraq region are having their crops burned at an alarming rate. Central Africa is on fire, and it's actually burning at a faster rate than the Amazon. The point is, these fires are everywhere, on every continent. And the next summer will be comparable, and probably the summer after that, because of what is called a feedback loop in climate science, where the conditions are now helping to worsen themselves due to the massive environmental impacts of such occurrences. What most of these fires have in common is that they are influenced by industrial deforestation and other forms of human-made climate change, and they put critical climate factors at risk for the whole world, not to mention the well-being of local and unique biodiversity, like the orangutans in Indonesia, who have just not been having a good time for a while now and will probably go extinct soon. but also a lot of humans aren't having a good time right now. And I think it's important to note that a lot of these fires are happening in places where people have been severely marginalized in the scale of global social economics for a lot of history now, where profits are made at the expense of people and their environment, mostly in a way usually invisibilized in so-called Western society. Will humans survive the ongoing climate apocalypse being brought on by the wealthy and powerful? What are we going to do about it besides blogging about it and protesting outside of embassies? I'll keep following this story as it unfolds and keep you informed. Hopefully, I'll see you in the news. Next episode, Hong Kong. Millions of individuals with a wide spectrum of observable tendencies, or a mass horde of mindless neo-colonial drones funded Soros-style by Western imperialism. Armchair socialists on Reddit seem to have found the answer. Subscribe now so you don't miss it. Just an update, part 2 of the Western Sahara report is in progress. It is a lot of work and things have been kind of weird in the last month or so, but I am hard at work trying to get more hands involved and working on multiple projects for this channel. You can support my work through my Patreon, patreon.com/autonomousmedia. I could really use a better computer for doing this work. Unfortunately, the one I have is unequipped to endure the workload I've been putting it through, and it really slows me down. Speaking of Patreon, I want to thank Albert and Capable. They're some very important patrons on my Patreon, and they are helping me to know that this is a thing that if I keep doing it, that people will support it, and it can make this possible for me to have as what I do. I want to thank Jack at Chibi Pictures, who donated a field recording mic. I'm using another one that I loaned for this video, but it's still, really cool that they gave that to me, and it will be really great when I get to go out and do interviews with people. Please like this video and, of course, share it with others so they can know what's going on. And, of course, as always, look out for each other.